This is the Human First AI Marketing Podcast. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is Paul Allen, CEO of SOAR.com, an AI studio where they're building AI to uplift humanity. And I love that, right along with our Human First AI mission here. And he is also the former co-founder of Ancestry.com and was the CEO there as well. So he's got his eye and finger on the pulse of what's going on in AI and Silicon Valley, and I'm really excited to talk to him about it. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. I'm so happy to be on your show. It's exciting.
Yeah, and there's exciting things happening in the world of AI. I'm interested why you picked AI to uplift humanity and how you see that mission for your company.
You know, it's a good question. I grew up in Utah. I was planning to be a professor. My dad was a professor. My mom was an educator. And I always thought that education was a noble profession. And I didn't have a good opinion of business people. My dad was an engineer and he built software and ended up consulting with dozens of the largest manufacturing companies in the US. And he didn't have a very high opinion of business leaders. And I think there's a lot of reasons why people don't trust big corporations. There is greed, there's self-service, self-dealing. But when I became an entrepreneur and my company made the Inc. 500, I went to Philadelphia in May of '96 for the Inc. 500 awards with the 500 fastest growing companies in the US. And I fell in love with entrepreneurs. I just thought, these are the alive people I have ever met in my life. They are choosing to follow a dream. They're creating jobs for everybody else. So I had this massive change of heart. And I do think that most founders are trying to build something awesome that does good for lots of people. I think a lot of times the companies start out with a good mission. And I do think over time with investors and with hiring a ton of smart, ambitious people, you start to kind of seek those monopoly moats that will, maybe unethically give you an advantage over others, or you start lobbying in Washington, D.C. to rig the system. So I hope that SOAR and all the companies that we build in our studio can not only start with good intent, but can structure the company in such a way and have incentives that will attract people who want to do good and do well. I think there's possible ways to do that. I've seen great founders who build a culture and do good all along the way, and they don't become corrupted, they don't become greedy. And our ambition is that the greatest invention of all time, AI, can be used to help uplift people in every part of life, not just their workplace or their finances, but their health, their relationships, their faith, their civic engagement, certainly their education. So we're actually very ambitious. We have quite a few big plans, but we definitely want to stay true to our core values of doing good.
Yeah, and I think it was partly inspiring me here to start Avenue 9 and the Human First AI marketing with what you do with SOAR for sales and like you mentioned, civic meetings and family stuff. My idea here is that if we put the human first, if we have human facing activities and we record those and analyze them with AI, we can then repurpose those into other formats and create other cool things and create additional value from maybe that human interaction rather than trying to replace the human interaction and build something, a robot to do it for humans. And that's really kind of what you guys are doing with meetings. Is that fair to say? Tell us a little bit about the call recording and some of the things that are possible with AI now that weren't, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, language, the newfound capability of computers to truly understand language and to generate language is a game changer. It changes everything. If you think about the 50s and 60s and 70s, my dad started using analog computers in 1959. He would turn 19 dials and it would predict what kind of machine tool he should use for a certain manufacturing process. I got my first PC in 1978. It was an Apple II computer, and it had a cassette tape where you would write your software and then record it onto your cassette tape. It didn't have a hard drive. There was no floppy drives. It was a really early computer. I didn't use punch cards or anything like that like they used in the 70s. But computers have come a freaking long way, especially in the last 2 years with the popularity of ChatGPT. And of course, the transformers technology and the paper was I think 2017 or 18. It took a few years for them to train the models to be good enough for humans to use, but now it passes the Turing test. It's indistinguishable. They can, I don't know, computers are now genius level with language. And so because of that, Mike, I think when you think about humans, what distinguishes humans from all other creatures? It's our ability to have language. I mean, to communicate, to write. I mean, there's some cultures in the world, I think 1,700 languages don't have a written component. So people live in a oral culture where there's really no past, present, and future. It's everything's present, and you just don't have the same ability to look back and then to predict. So I think writing and written language is extraordinary. But yeah, I think when humans can talk and the AI can record and transcribe, the AI can then do all kinds of magical things with the words you speak. And again, instead of replacing humans with robots and AI, I think if we build systems that start with our language, with our ideas, with our thoughts that are expressed as words, and then we train the AI to take those words and do things with our words, turn things that we say into reality, design an app and build an app and code an app and market an app that we spoke into existence. So one of the great powers of deity is God said, let there be light, and there was light. And now I actually feel like all of us who I believe are God's children, that he is our creator and that he is our, spirit father. But all of a sudden, the language that we've always had can now be used to turn things into reality. We'll be able to speak things into existence in a way that's never been possible before. So it's kind of scary because there are people with bad intent that will use these powers for ill. But I do think that most of us want to do good and have a great life and be a benefit to our fellow humans. And so if we have good intentions and we speak those things into existence, I think the miraculous things that are around the corner, that are already here, but they're not evenly distributed, I think we're in for a pretty prosperous, potentially prosperous future.
Thank you for that. I think there's like 3 or 4 reasons for that. One is what you said, the ability to create things. I think if the variable cost of creating content is coming down and essentially zero, and there's unlimited channels on YouTube or other membership groups and communities, the question, kind of becomes, what do you want to create? You can make anything. What do you want to make, and how can you make an impact, which is a cool way to think about it. The second one for me, though, is some of the stuff that I know you're doing, but we haven't talked about yet, which is analyzing the stuff you've already created. There was a time where, like you'd already mentioned, where if you wanted copies of stuff, you had to like print copies of things and pass them out or mail them around, or even like email and stuff. And now there was no real, I think, data computing and analytics. Now predictive analytics and some of the processing that you can do on recorded transcripts and stuff is insane. So can you talk a little bit about what happens after we record and transcribe the language?
Yeah. So certainly we can talk and create things with AI and AI agents building things. But what you're getting at is where we started a few years ago. We thought, it's common for all of us in the workplace and beforehand when we're in education to be trained on stuff, a sales training methodology that millions of people have been taught. And we sit in a classroom for days, weeks, months, learning, listening, maybe practicing a little bit. But the fact is, it's way easier to train people on a methodology or a framework than it is to get them to actually implement it. And the chance that they implement it well, like with excellence, is extremely low, especially first time out. I mean, if you think about athletes or performers, they're training for decades before they can become elite performers. And they get feedback from coaches. They get to watch game film. Most of us in the knowledge workspace have been trained on lots of things, and then we never have any feedback on how well we're doing with that training. So that's what we started to revolutionize. And if you have a sales training methodology or a leadership training or a communication technique, and you teach people how to do it this way, how to run a meeting, for example, well, now the AI can observe everything that was said in the meeting and how effectively you implemented the exact methodology you've invested in, and give you a grade or a score or verbal feedback that says, hey, there's 7 steps in this process. You skipped step 3 and step 5. Do you want to watch the game film and, go see where you went wrong? And here's what I would have suggested for the next one. And now let's do a role play. Let's practice. The next time, the chance that you're going to do it right, because you got feedback that first time, is way, way higher. And when you can get feedback every hour or every week for months or years, the chance that you can perform with excellence on any training methodology or framework is extremely high. And we do think that most of the nearly $400 billion of workplace training is ineffective. Now, if that workplace training can be paired with custom AI that is built by my team and deployed inside of your meeting recording apps, then there's no question that everybody you invest in training can actually level up and get to excellence in whatever methodology you've chosen. So that's a really big part of what we do. We have a workplace AI subsidiary. It's partnering with SHRM, the largest HR association in the world. There's also an ongoing partnership with Sandler so that all the Sandler franchisees can sell Sandler AI to their clients so they can train them. They can provide the AI. You don't need Gong anymore. You might not need Chorus or SalesLoft. You'll just have a Sandler AI that actually helps you ask better pain questions and go to the decision or the budget cycle and find out who are ask the right questions, get the right information, and close the sale and build a long-term relationship. AI can now guide and coach you as you implement that phenomenally successful methodology.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of cool things that you can now look at. Like now that you have what happened in a face-to-face or a voice-to-voice call, you can really do some cool stuff with that data. I think there's also something cool that you can do. And kind of number 3 for me is the machine learning that happens at scale. So not only on your call, but you're now seeing thousands of civic meetings and local government meetings that haven't been captured word for word before, and all kinds of data that is again, we've never had this opportunity to look at what happened in 1,000 different town hall meetings or things around the country. That's a different level of scale and some cool uses of AI there too, right?
I think it's really exciting. The citizenportal.ai website, which we started 2 years ago, now has about 1.05 million hours of video footage from city, county, state, and federal meetings. So just like you're saying, thousands of city council meetings, all the congressional hearings, there's 52 or 53 Senate and House committees, and they're constantly talking and meeting and interviewing the smartest people in the field, the experts. They subpoena people. And so you've got all that content. Now, we have almost 9 billion words that we've transcribed from public meetings in the US over the last 3 or 4 years. Now, as you think about, well, how's that useful? Well, if you're a real estate developer that likes to build schools or jails or maybe affordable housing, and you're trying to find out what cities, what counties, what states are talking about construction projects that I might want to bid on, that I might want to know about. Hey, Oregon's building these schools. And so now I can network my way into, being part of that RFP. And so if you're doing business with the government, citizenportal.ai could be an incredible tool for you. If you're a citizen that cares about a certain issue and maybe school choice, you can type in school choice, or you can ask Citizen Portal GPT, what cities across the country or what state legislators are advocating for school choice. Utah actually passed a law. I don't live in Utah, I live in Missouri, but I used to live in Utah. My niece said that there's a school choice law that was passed by the Utah legislature that gives $8,000 scholarships to parents of homeschooled children.
Ooh,
it's like,
nice.
I think it might be the first in the country to say, you're going to homeschool your kids? Here's a potential budget for $8,000. Now, you have to submit to an education board what your spending plan is. Like, how will you use that $8,000? You can't just, go do anything with it. Although, here's my joke. I have 5 grandkids with one on the way. I'm like, my grandson, he's 5, maybe he should be a sports broadcaster. So what he needs is an $8,000 budget to go to every sporting event with his grandfather so that he can start his career journey to become a sports broadcaster. Wouldn't that be a fun way to apply that $8,000?
I think so too. Yeah, I'm sure you can get creative with these educational dollars. But your point there is well taken, that we can do cool things now in searching this data and find common questions people are asking, or for our clients, or like you said, common marketing search terms and account-based marketing, to all kinds of cool things that then lead us to, I think, what I consider number 4 with AI is the automation and the if this, then that. So now we can set up these triggers where if something happens in a meeting, we have something else happen. Or if we didn't do, the part of our agenda in our sales call, now we can trigger some sort of additional training or other things. How have you used that in any of these companies that you have rolling, of like sort of the automation and triggers at the end, and not at the beginning to replace the humans, but at the end of saying, oh, based on what we have happening and based on the trends around the country, now we can do this?
Yeah, it's the biggest part of our product roadmap for both our workplace subsidiary, our sales AI, and our founder portal, where we're shipping Startup Scribe. So we want to help startup teams double, triple their chance of succeeding. And so we record all their calls and meetings. We assign action items to each person after the meeting and says, okay, Mike, here's 3 action items that you're supposed to do after the meeting. Now, the big part of our roadmap, and we have a team working on this now, along with one of our PhD advisory board members who helped us get into AI 4 years ago. We've analyzed the 10,000 recent tasks assigned to different people using our platform. Now we're building agents that can take 10% of those tasks and do them for you, maybe even before the meeting's done, but certainly within a few minutes after the meeting's done. And then our goal is to get to 20%, 30%, 50%, 90% of the tasks assigned to each person in the meeting have a swarm of AI agents that have certain capabilities that raise their hand and say, Mike, we can do 80% or 90% of these tasks for you under your guidance, with your authorization. Now, you might start trusting one of your agents to just go do it from now on and not have to kind of have a human in the loop because they get it right every time. But I think that's the next stage of human productivity. We'll get 10x, 100x, 1000x humans, because all the words we speak will be understood by a swarm of agents, and each of us will have one or more, maybe hundreds of agents that can do the work for us, and maybe do it faster and better than we could do it ourselves, but doing it at our request based on the words we've said. So that's really the difference. Is you might have a autonomous agent. I think there's some thought experiments about what if self-driving cars owned themselves and there was no human involved at all. Like, could that be a public good? Could the AI driven cars pick up passengers, take money, schedule their own self repairs or whatever? And could there be a public service that nobody really owns and it's completely autonomous? I don't know how the world will reorganize economically. I do think there's a increasing chance that universal basic income will have to happen at some point because of AI and robots doing so much productive work, and blue collar and white collar, and who knows where things will go. But I want to get back to the Citizen Portal. I think there's one exciting potential right now for Citizen Portal users, and that is the Department of Government Efficiency, which quite a few luminary people are rallying around, saying, what if we could cut $2 trillion from federal spending, balance the budget, get a surplus, and pay down the debt? A year ago, that seemed impossible. Neither political party seemed to have much will around that. But now, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Bill Ackman and so many others, Naval saying, hey, I want to help. What if every public meeting and every municipal budget were available to Citizen Portal users so that we could have tens of thousands of volunteers doing DOGE government efficiency work in your own city, county, or state? And then we know that the people running the federal DOGE are going to be extraordinarily capable of reducing regulation and unnecessary regulation, and increasing entrepreneurial activity and innovation, and cutting spending and putting more and more smart federal workers back into the private workforce. So I do think that if anyone's interested in joining a Doge distributed nationwide movement, because there's inefficiency in your state government a lot, and in your city and county probably too. And so with more eyeballs and with more expertise, we might be able to cut our taxes across the board and really add to our potential prosperity.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I do want to ask you about the future and stuff in here in a second before we let you go. But I think that's interesting because before we had to sort of crowdsource it, the last 20 years with the internet, we could use thousands of humans to kind of review stuff and review the notes of meetings or look at budgets and find things. And it's been a really cool experiment just in global, workforces and humanity. If you ask the internet or Reddit to do something, like somebody has enough time and energy to go and do some crazy things. But now we don't have to. Now we can start using AI and agents to collect that information and data. And it's going to be really interesting going forward. Before we talk about the future, though, with you, I would be remiss if we didn't go backwards a little bit. Do you want to give us the short version of Ancestry.com and how you got into this crazy entrepreneurial space in the first place?
Yeah, it's a pretty natural journey for me. When I decided to start my first company, it was based on a search engine technology. My brother created a company called Folio, and it became the top search engine, desktop search engine in the United States. It was acquired eventually by LexisNexis, but they licensed their software to any small business that wanted to become an electronic publisher. And I loved learning, I love books, and so my best friend and I decided to start a company to put all the world's best books on CD-ROM and to index every keyword, every word in the books. And so you have these electronic libraries, maybe $15,000 worth of books. You could sell it on a CD for $99 with a search engine. So we started selling faith collections, education collections, American history, and we made millions of dollars a year. And that's why we made the Inc. 500. But in 95, in September, I went to an internet conference in San Francisco. Now the internet, the Mosaic browser, I think came out in 94. And so it started spreading. And the writing was on the wall that the CD-ROM business model would die. And as soon as I went to that internet developers conference and realized my whole business model is at risk, what can we put on the internet, since the internet will be where all content is stored? We didn't talk about the cloud back then. We just talked about the World Wide Web. But as I had spent hundreds or thousands of hours in libraries looking for books to license, I realized that the historical sections of the libraries, particularly the genealogical section of every library, is all public domain. They are packed with names, dates, and places, birth records, marriage records, all kinds of historical records and profiles of settlers of each town in the country. So we decided, well, what if we just put all the world's genealogy on the internet? So we sold our CD-ROM business to another company and kept our team of 35 people that were already really good at electronic publishing on CD-ROM. And instead of books on CD-ROM, now we went for genealogical data and publish it on the internet. So within a year, we were million users a month. We had all this free genealogy data. We raised all this venture capital. We launched a website called myfamily.com that became the top photo sharing site in the world, where the genealogists of the family would invite their children, their cousins, their aunts and uncles, their siblings to join a private social network. The myfamily.com site skyrocketed. And one of the projects we're rebuilding in the next year is the old myfamily.com site was shut down by Ancestry in 2015. Oh, wow. And the team that built it realized it created a lot of the value of Ancestry.com in the early years. Most of the genealogical data we collected from our users came through myfamily.com, and then people gave us permission to index it for Ancestry.com. So my team is going to launch familyportal.ai in the next few months, and we'll try to bring back what was one of the most popular internet sites of the late 90s. And this time it will do the same things that it did 20 years ago, but it will also allow you to interview all your relatives and have a transcribed history of your parents' life, your grandparents' life.
Oh, that's awesome.
AI could detect the best stories and meaningful clips and turn them into bite-sized clips that you can share with extended family members. So we're very excited that the original My Family can be brought back as Family Portal, but now with a bunch of AI interviewing and recording and clipping tools to really help you treasure your family stories for decades to come.
I think that's awesome, and I have an introduction for you here once we wrap up. But I had an idea with a friend of mine to do grandpods, where I could be the podcaster interviewing your grandparents and stuff.
That is awesome. Yeah,
them.
not everyone would be a great interviewer because you might not know the questions to ask. So if that's a very cool service, I think a lot of people would go for that.
Yeah, I thought it'd be great too, and a great hook. And you know that there's those crazy grandparents that have just run out of shits to give, and they just have the best stories, and you're like, it could be so funny.
The name itself is fantastic. Grandpods, that is awesome. I love it.
All right, well, that's my crazy idea for the future, but I want to get yours before we go. If you look out like 5 years, let's say like 2030, what do you think the world of business and AI tools look like? You mentioned we've already passed the Turing test. We've already gotten to genius level in a few categories. How fast do you think things are still moving? Are we in an early growth phase, or is this like just the tip of the spear here, and we're going to see massive changes 5 years from now?
I think one seismic shift that I'm pushing for, and I think a lot of other good people will want to go this direction, is instead of a few multi-trillion-dollar companies owning and controlling the AI world and having AI assistants that we all pay for, and they use our data that they've collected from all kinds of permissioned and non-permissioned sources. They've augmented their data about us. They have a massive multi-million data points on us. If they use AI to, serve us, but we're really the product, it's a real problem for me. So what I am excited about is the open AI, not open AI, which is now closed AI, but the concept of open source AI that can be locally hosted and that you can run it on your own devices. I actually think that's going to happen. And I think there's a good chance that an ecosystem of millions of entrepreneurs building really cool things on top of distributed localized AI. So instead of central control and central ownership, we end up with a massively distributed future of AI. And that gives humans way more control instead of us being captured by algorithms that other people control and they try to monetize our time and attention. Now we have local AI and we get to design the functionality. So one of the best quotes is, the best way to predict the future is by inventing it. And so if we can start inventing these pieces of distributed AI for your faith, your family, your friendships, your workplace, your citizenship, and helping you be successful at work and outside of work, and then we'll be joining the ecosystem of non-multi-trillion-dollar companies that are trying to own the future. Now, I think the hardest thing to predict is how will Android robots, when they're manufactured and sold by the millions, how will that affect our daily life? I think it's almost impossible to predict, but they can talk, they can walk, they can see, they can talk, they can lift. There's just going to be, Elon's right, there's going to be, probably billions of robots in the future. And maybe we'll each own some and maybe we'll lease them, or who knows. But I think that's the hardest thing to predict, because it will be not just digital devices that we're staring at. It'll be physical robots walking around, driving, talking, doing things. And maybe at our request, we'll have a swarm of robot AIs, not just a swarm of digital agent AIs. So I really can't give a timeline. I think Elon and others, Ray Kurzweil, they're pretty good at timelines. I just kind of have a general sense directionally, and I know what our team is working on right now. So I'm better at predicting 3 to 6 months from now, not 5 or 6 years from now. But I am optimistic.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's why it's a tough question. But I think you've hit on a lot of things that I find fascinating. The universal basic income, I think, is going to have to happen at some point. And if we can build everything we need for humans to survive with robots, including our food sources and things like that, I don't know why people would have to work as much. I think people still will choose to be entrepreneurs and create cool things. And maybe it's more art and play and fun social gatherings and human experiences. But it sounds like you're pretty bullish, though. You think that AGI is going to happen, that these open AIs are going to happen, that true self-driving cars and autonomous robots are going to happen at some point in our lifetime?
I don't really think about AGI or ASI as being real, because a lot of people start imputing consciousness or sentience to those bits and bytes. And I just don't ever think that a digital creation has a human value or human rights or consciousness. So I just don't believe that. But I do think that the AI agents, the robots, the physical and digital will be abundant, and that hopefully humans will actually be ultra creative and ultra productive and ultra prosperous. And so I again, we're trying to create a future that we want. There will be people creating futures we don't want, and hopefully enough of us can resist the central control of government or trillion-dollar corporations. We don't want them to continue to grow in power. I love the decentralized and distributed models, and that's what we're betting on and building for.
I think it's really cool too, and I think it's proven out over the last 100 years or so that with the technology and innovations, people tend to choose the good over the bad, or the good guys can at least keep up with the bad guys and stuff to keep it somewhat balanced. So I really appreciate the time and really cool thoughts there, Paul. Paul Allen from SOAR.com, the AI studio, also former founder of Ancestry.com. Paul, before we let you go, how can you help us? How can we help you with SOAR.com?
Anyone who wants to use a free version of our meeting recording tool, our action item task manager, and soon the AI agents that will be at your disposal, you can get a glimpse of that if you go to SOARsales.com. You can sign up, and if you're in sales, that would be a good place to start. You can go to Workplace AI and sign up for the SOAR Scribe product, which is good for leaders, managers, and in reinforcing the cultural and skills that you've been trained on. We'll end up with a whole bunch of different scribes. If you're a journalist, we have News Scribe, and you can start recording all your interviews with experts, and then having generative AI draft stories for you that you can edit and publish under your name. And so we have the Family Scribe that's in beta testing right now, so you can interview elderly relatives. And so anyone joining and using any of our scribes can then give us recommendations. What do you want built? What do you need? And that's really what we crave at this stage, is what do people want us to build for them that will help them increase their success rates and their productivity?
I think that is awesome. It'll be really fun to play with, and it'll be fun to see where you go from here and what's next for SOAR. So keep going. Everybody else, share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe. It's a new show, and we need all the reviews, comments, and love that we can get to help get it off the ground. If you want to learn more about how you can use AI tools for human first AI marketing, go to avenue9.com. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.